Before watching this video, you might find it useful to watch our video on clinical trials. An expanded access program is a pathway for a patient with a serious condition or life-threatening illness to access a new treatment outside of a clinical trial. Expanded access programs are for patients who do not have satisfactory standard treatments available and who cannot enroll in a clinical trial. These programs are sometimes called compassionate use or early access or managed access programs. In some countries, they're called named patient programs. Expanded access programs were first called compassionate use programs and have been around in an informal way since the 1960s. They emerged at that time in response to governments passing stricter laws to guide the drug development process. These laws were intended to make drug development safer and more accountable. They required drug manufacturers to objectively collect information about the safety and effectiveness of a new treatment in clinical trials. This was so the treatment could be properly reviewed before being approved for human use. Advocates of compassionate use were concerned that the 8 to 10 years it took to develop a drug meant that people with serious illnesses, no approved options, and unable to participate in a clinical trial were made to suffer needlessly while waiting for a drug to get approval. Compassionate use programs were used to treat patients with cancer in the 1970s. Then, in the 1980s, the AIDS crisis hit. Organizations like the FDA developed formal pathways for patients with life-threatening illnesses to access new treatments earlier in the drug development process, hence the name early access programs. The main difference is that the intention of a clinical trial is to conduct research. The main intention of an expanded access program is to provide treatment to a patient in need. When we talked about clinical trials, we touched on the idea of eligibility criteria, which are used to select patients who are suitable for the trial and help researchers collect good quality information. Expanded access programs also have eligibility criteria, but usually these are intended to include a broader group of patients. For example, a patient with an unrelated medical condition may not be eligible for a clinical trial, but may be able to access a new treatment via an expanded access program. Patients treated in an expanded access program may not need to travel to a clinical trial site to receive their treatment. In terms of costs, drug manufacturers typically make the drug available free of charge in clinical trials. For expanded access programs, drug manufacturers may make the drug available for free, while others may not. Every country has its own specific regulatory pathway. Your physician may need to have more direct contact with a regulatory authority to ask permission to use a new treatment in an expanded access program. In clinical trials, the drug manufacturer does this administrative work. Informed consent is also required for expanded access programs. As with clinical trials, it is important to be aware of the risks as well as the benefits. Expanded access programs run in parallel to clinical trials, and they have the same potential risks and benefits, as well as the same safety standards. Expanded access programs do not have phases, but typically overlap with phase 2 and phase 3 of clinical trials. What this means is that expanded access makes a new treatment available outside of a clinical trial only after information collected in the clinical trial gives a basic indication of safety and effectiveness. Monitoring for side effects is done in the same way as for clinical trials. Sometimes researchers collect additional information about the safety and effectiveness of the new treatment in an expanded access program. This is known as real-world data collection. And for some new treatments, this real-world data is added to information collected from the clinical trial. This can potentially speed up the approval process. Specific regulations will vary from country to country. Generally speaking, for a patient to participate in an expanded access program, they must have a serious and life-threatening condition, not be eligible for any ongoing clinical trials, have no other comparable treatment options, are likely to experience benefits that outweigh the risks. So again, this depends on the expanded access program and local regulations. Typically, there is a plan called the treatment protocol, which gives specific details about participation in the expanded access program. In general, participation begins with a conversation between you and your physician. about the risks, such as side effects, and the benefits, such as accessing a new treatment before it's widely available. If you decide to participate in an expanded access program, your physician will check to see that you match its eligibility criteria. If you do, then they will ask the drug manufacturer to enroll you in the program. However, the drug manufacturer is under no obligation to grant access to the new treatment. In addition to applying for enrollment, your physician will need to have direct contact with an ethics board and/or regulatory authority to ask for permission to use a new treatment in an expanded access program. Before starting treatment, you'll be asked to sign an informed consent form to document that you understand the risks and benefits of participation. While on treatment, you may need to have tests conducted. There may be costs involved for these tests. Sometimes the costs of tests or even treatment are not covered, and it's important to discuss this before deciding to participate. Expanded access programs are used to make new treatments that have not yet been approved available outside of clinical trials. They have the same safety standards as clinical trials. There are risks as well as benefits to participating in an expanded access program. Expanded access programs are for patients with serious conditions or life-threatening illnesses who do not have approved treatment options and cannot participate in a clinical trial. Thank you for watching our video. We hope you found it useful.